G'day everyone. Just wanted to quickly share a fun little hack. I love hacks that I thought of the other night when somebody in the group, in the Pro Presenter group, asked about making the timer on their stage display on the back wall, the countdown timer, flash when it reaches 0. There's no built-in way to do that. There is built-in ways to change the colors. So when you reach certain times, when you're getting close to 0, you might change it to yellow, and when you hit 0, you might change it to red, for example. Built-in color triggers, as they say, but nothing to really animate or flash it. But I thought of a hack, and I thought I'd share it for anybody who's interested. And there might be a couple. I noticed that this question does get asked every kind of 6 months in the group, so there might be 1 or 2 people who want to do this. So I'll demonstrate how to do that. I've got a message timer here that I've set to about 10 seconds. It's about to hit 0 time. On my preview of the stage display, you'll see it hit 0. And when it does that request, starts flashing red. And the hack, the workaround I'm about to show you, is kind of flexible. It's pretty cool. It might be fun to explore it because you can do other things with it, like maybe flash a shape behind the text if you prefer that. And actually, if you explore the possibilities, you can get quite creative and when you find out what's possible using this method. So let's hurry up and jump in and demonstrate how to do that by building a brand new layout from scratch and showing you how this is done. And I'll try and make this quick, not too boring. So first of all, let's add a display for my message timer. And I'm going to quickly try to format that nice and quickly. I like countdown timers to be green. I don't fancy having the hours or the sub-seconds on, and I like it when at least one color trigger to be red when it finally hits 0. And maybe it's part of a real stage display and it sits somewhere on the screen in a position typically. So at this point we've got a display that will be green, and when it finally hits 0, it'll be static red. Let me just make sure that that's working. Reset that to 10 seconds, hit start, and it'll finally hit 0 and go red. I'm happy with that. That's probably working fine. Let's keep editing. Okay, so the two options, depending on whether you want to flash a shape behind or flash the text, are a little bit different. In fact, putting a shape behind is easier, so let's do that first. You can add a shape, any shape, maybe a rounded rectangle might look nice, or a rectangle. I just chose an ellipse for today's demo. I might continue to do that again for this. So I'll put that ellipse so it's exactly kind of the right size that I want it, maybe a little bigger actually, and roughly centered. And so far, and then arrange the order so that it is in fact behind. Great. So now I've got an ellipse behind it, solid fill. The trick now is to change the fill of that ellipse that's behind, the shape fill, not from a solid color to a piece of media. This is the trick. And the piece of media I'm going to use is a still image. It could be an animation, by the way. It could be a pre-built animation. That's another idea. But in this case, I've just chosen to use a still image, black pixels, just all black pixels. I suggest when you build one of these, don't make it too small, maybe 3 or 4, 500 pixels wide and deep. And now we've got a black image, which is hard to see on a black background. But if we go to the image inspector, we can now add an effect. Not many people use these effects. I love the adjust color, by the way, for motion backgrounds. But there's some other effects that are animated, and when you apply it, they can create some nice attention-grabbing effects, like strobe. Now this is probably not very pleasant. I'm going to work on that. I want that to be probably yellow behind my red text when it hits 0, and I'd like it to be a little bit more balanced, a lot less random, and a bit slower. Something like that. So slow that down. Length affects how long it's on for. And 1 seems to be a nice even on and off. And randomness, I'm not sure if you're going to appreciate that. I think a nice on and off steady kind of strobe. And quickly notice in the preview that my square image that I chose doesn't fill the ellipse too well. So don't forget, there's the trusty old stretch to fill. So at this point, we've now got a stage display with a permanently flashing yellow orb behind the timer. Not exactly what we want. And this is where visibility rules come into play. So highlight that flashing shape and set some visibility rules. And I think you know where we're going next. You've got to select that timer and make it only visible when that timer is expired, and maybe I think also when it's running. So now this timer has to be expired, less than 0 in the case of a countdown timer, and still running. So in this case, it'll be invisible if either of these conditions are not met. So while the timer is not running or has time above 0 seconds, it's not visible. But the moment it hits 0, i.e. it's expired, and meets the other condition, it's still running, those visibility rules will be satisfied, and now the shape is visible. And we've kind of achieved a very basic requirement. It's a little bit ugly with a sharp edge, so I'll show you another effect that we can take advantage of with a black background. Back into that media inspector, back into the effects, we can stack these and add a vignette, a black vignette around it, and to give that kind of nice soft edge. Now I've got this nice soft edge appearing, and of course it disappears as long as the timer is not running or has time. So again, if I run that timer down to 0, then you get to see it kick in that moment we hit 0. So that's the easy option, making a shape flash behind the existing text. Getting the text itself to flash requires a little bit more tricky work, but let's do that. And we might do that by duplicating that and then just pasting that message and black image over here, do them side by side. That's these two top here, so let's work on them. So I'm going to get it to flash red, so I'm going to edit the image that's behind it and go into the inspector, go back to those effects where I've achieved a yellow flash. I'm going to change that to a red strobe, and I'm going to get rid of that vignette so it's the full kind of ellipse. And that's as long as it's in front of all the possible text. Maybe it would be better to use a square shape rather than an ellipse, but it's going to work for this demo right now. Now, the next thing to do is make this message timer set its text, rather than being a text color, set it to be a text cutout to reveal that background, that flashing red background behind it, and also fill that shape with some black to hide that. Oh, now my ellipse is sticking out too much, isn't it? Let me make that ellipse a little smaller so it's completely obscured by my black filled timer in front of it that has a cutout that should be revealing the red flashing text. However, this setup, don't forget, that flashing ellipse is only visible when the timer's expired. So if I check this now, there's no flashing red ellipse behind it, there's just black. So it's kind of black on black. So this is effectively, while the timer is stopped or has time in it, it's effectively invisible. So we need to make it set up another shape to show the time until we get to 0. So we'll duplicate it and use visibility rules again. So let's do that. So I'll take that message timer, copy and paste it, and the one that's on top, let's align that perfectly, and let's set its text to a nice green. Keep that color trigger, and we are good. Oh, that text cutout, by the way, that one with the text cutout, you may find you need to get rid of the trigger on that one. So we've got the cutout, and then the one above is green text with a red trigger. And this one needs a visibility rule, this one on top. We want it to only show while the timer is running. Or, let me think, has time remaining. Yeah, as long as it has time remaining, whether it's running or not. Okay, it took a moment for that to kick in. But now we've got that third timer that shows, and then it disappears when we run out of timer, and the one underneath is a black box with a cutout showing the red flashing ellipse underneath, effectively creating flashing text. And of course, There are lots of possible, when you go in and look at the effects that we can apply to media, you'll see there's kaleidoscope effects and all sorts of other effects that you can explore and maybe come up with something different that you prefer. One example is, what did I see before? Image distortion, pixelized plasma. Oh, that's pretty. So there you go. If you're desperate to have that text flash, or maybe a shape, or even something wild flashing behind your timer that only appears when the timer's run out, that's one kind of hack you can do.